Hola, I'm Claudia Romo Edelman.
And I'm Cynthia Kleinbaum Milner.
And this is a podcast, A La Latina.
The playbook to succeed being your authentic self.
Today, the incredible Mónica Gil. Mónica is the Chief Administrative and Marketing Officer of Telemundo. And here are the 3 key takeaways of this podcast.
Number 1, make sure you understand the unspoken rules of your organization. She started learning this by being in politics, but the way that you can do it is observing how other people act in your organization and what makes them succeed and what makes them fail.
Number 2, when it comes to technology, be aware and get going. It's so much easier to keep up than catch up.
And number 3, sometimes code switching is necessary for you to get the things you need to get done and to succeed.
All of that and more here at A La Latina.
Stick around. Before this episode starts, go to alalatina.com and sign up for our newsletter. We've put together a ton of career advice and worksheets that you can download to manage your career and get to the top in half the time
with half the bruises. A La Latina. Today, a super special guest, Mónica Gil.
Mónica is the Chief Administrative and Marketing Officer at Telemundo.
And we cannot be more delighted to have you. What an honor to have you with us, Mónica.
Gracias. What a special treat to have 2 phenomenal women. So gracias. Thank you for having me here.
You're such a role model, a trailblazer, and inspiration in so many ways, in so many different dimensions. Since I started getting into this world, your name has been one of the pillars that has guided me and so many others. I want to know everything about you. What made you be who you are and what you do today? Tell us about your background.
Ay, Claudia, gracias. It's so nice to just hear you. And when you say that, it's just so humbling because I see both of you and I've been following your guys' work for some time. You know, I think our stories are very similar. Probably all of us have a similar story. We have great parents who came to this country and wanted to make a better life for us. I'm fortunate because I had a very strong household, very strong mom and dad. We are from Zacatecas, Mexico. We come from a very small pueblo, which was about at the time, you know, when my parents were there in the 60s and the 70s, there was probably about 5,000, 6,000 people in the whole pueblo. So you can imagine everybody knew everything. My dad had the foresight to figure out, you know what, it's probably best if I take the family to the United States. So they came and they immigrated to Santa Barbara, California. My dad actually was a bracero during the bracero program because the United States needed workers here.
Right.
So he came first, and then after living here, he realized that he can probably give the family a better life coming here. And he brought the entire 11 kids, because I was not born yet, to California, and then I was born here, so I am one of 12 children.
You are kidding me.
I am
And
the
the
baby.
youngest
Sí,
of 12.
sí, the
That
baby.
sounds fun.
Okay, when you say what made you who you are and what you do today,
That's it.
12 siblings.
That's it. Because you know what happens when you have such a big family is you really are a team. And one of the other things that you realize is that your name, where you're part of the Heath family, whatever you do represents everyone else, right? And at first I didn't understand that, but then you realize that you really are a team. You're figuring out how to sustain the household, you're figuring out how to contribute to the household, and everybody has a role. So I was one of 12. I was the only one born in California, but I always grew in a house that was full of love, for sure. That's the one thing that I think is really important. Second, we all had a part to make sure that the household functioned. So I was fortunate because I grew up with that really strong ethic of work, but also of teamwork, which I think that if you think about what makes you successful in a job is how do you figure out how to make everybody perform to their best, which is what mom and dad did. And all of us needed to make sure that we were able to bring our best selves to the table. So they really allowed that, you know, with having so many family members. One of the things that you know is que todos somos diferentes. And not everybody is good at one thing. So you have to figure out what's that skill set and you polish it. So I think that's something that I realized growing up and going into my career spaces was figuring out, you know, what is my skill set that I can contribute to this common goal and this common good. And also understanding that I can learn by observing others and observing how they do their task and how they do that well. So in a nutshell, I grew up in Santa Barbara, went to the local schools there, and then went to Berkeley for my undergrad and then USC for my master's. And I was a California girl for all my life until all of a sudden I came to Telemundo and I decided to move. My family thinks I moved to like a different continent, and it's really just 5 hours away.
Yeah.
They thought it was like the craziest thing ever.
So you graduate, you take your first job, and like what happened? Where was your first job, and how did you climb that ladder in the first job?
Yeah, my first job out of college was with a man who you guys may know his name was Antonio Villaraigosa, the first mayor of Los Angeles.
Yeah.
So what happened was at that point, I had finished college, Berkeley, then I went to USC for my master's. My dad was ill. So
Right
one of the
after.
things
So
is-
you did a master right after.
Yeah, I did. I did right after. I thought I was going to go to law school. But because my dad was ill, I didn't want to leave California. So I ended up applying to SC and I got in. And for me, I met another peer who had a similar situation. And he came up to me one day and he said, hey, this guy named Antonio Villaraigosa is looking for people to work for him. He had interviewed. And I guess Antonio asked him, hey, do you know anybody else like you who has a similar background? We had the same exact background, except I was Latina and he was Asian. And one of the things is that we both had that kind of that sense of justice and wanting to do good. So he hired me, and my first real job was working for Villaraigosa as a press secretary and constituent services for him. And I think that is one of the things where you learned about branding, where you learn about persuasion, where you learn, quite frankly, about the absolute need to collaborate with people who are different than you. So I think a lot of my grounding came from that very first job. And you can think about being 20 something, dealing with politics, with a big personality.
Yeah.
It was a great moment and great learning for me, and understanding politics, where I think has helped me learn the rules of the game in any job that I'm in, which I think that is critical for anybody who wants to succeed. Learn the unspoken rules of the game, I'd say, to be a little bit more precise.
I'm totally at all. I mean, like, I'm sorry. You're like, yeah, I did my
First
master's at USC and all of that, but you didn't have the role models immediately in your family to do the master degree and so on, and like just like to learn. How did you learn that? Like, who was guiding you? Like, did you watch any shows? Did you have anybody tell you like you should do a master's degree, or you should learn the unwritten rules, or like you said that one of your superpowers was observe and learn how others do it. Is that what happened?
Absolutely. I think when we grow up in our space, you do not have those role models other than the academic role models, I say. But, I started off this conversation by saying one of the things that my household had was love. And I had a whole lot of it with 12 kids in the family. And what I think my parents did was teach me the need to be responsible, ethical, which I can't tell you how much that matters. Ethics was so important, in having integrity in what you do. So for me, it was always making sure that I did a really good job. My dad was a gardener his entire life. My mom was a homemaker. So for them, it didn't matter what job they had. It was making sure that whatever job that I had, in this case, my dad being a gardener, that was perfect. However my mom cooked for us, that meal was perfect. So for me, I learned about kind of editing and making sure that whatever you're delivering is your best self at the table. From my role models, if you think about it, were my teachers in many ways. Were Mr. McEachin in high school, who Mr. McEachin said to me one day, I remember in high school, you have a really good story. How do you tell that story? I was terrified. So for me, it was figuring out my parents' ethics, their morals, and their work skill, and then figuring out who's I can see. And for me, it was teachers that believed in me. It was these people that really said, she's got something. Let me figure it out. But I didn't have any formal training. A lot of it comes from observing. And you guys can probably appreciate this. Being an immigrant, you become very observant.
Yeah.
You become very observant about what works and what doesn't work, especially what doesn't work. You become very observant of people's behaviors. If you think about your own lives, if you see your peers and you say, oh, that person's doing really well, how is that person successful? So I can't say I had any formal training other than it was my teachers and being observant, but also it was it's a level of expectation that your parents have of you.
So they had expectations here for the 12 kids. They were like,
not academic. It was more being a good person. So for me, this expectation of being a good person, being kind, being useful, lifting the other sibling up. So to me, that's what it was, because they didn't have, my dad went to 3rd grade. My mom went to 6th grade.
But it's amazing how the sense of social justice has carried you through your entire career. I think I was telling you, Claudia, early on when we started talking about doing the podcast, the data points that were part of our inspiration came from a study you commissioned. You commissioned a study on the state of Latinas in the workplace. And you could tell from that study the passion that you have. And we have also heard from many Latinos and Latinas that they say, it seems like those that already made it don't want to keep the doors open for us. Like there's the divide of, I already made it, let me close the door behind me. And we want to do the opposite. And we're inspired by what you're doing with the research and with your work. And now knowing that it came from your parents just makes me think that, and from your teachers, that we always have to be aware of who's watching, because whatever we do, we are role models even if we don't want to. And you're role models to your kids, you're role models to your colleagues. I'm sure in Telemundo you're a role model too.
And the point that you just made about, I was observant as migrants were observant, and you learn how to do it. What we have seen is that many people either are observant and learn how to do it, but then at the cost of themselves, of suppressing who they are and just becoming the man that is leading around the garden, even you're a woman, or suppressing your Latinidad and changing your name and changing. So is the point is how to make sure that, you know, like we understand not only our role, but also our superpower, so that we don't lose it. Observe and learn without losing yourself. Make it to the top and have the time with have the bruises. Succeed being your authentic self without having to.
You know, wow, both of you right now, just everything that you talk about is bringing up so many different emotions, right? And just so many different feelings. That feeling of having to be an other your whole life. And you talk about justice. The reason I think that I am motivated to do what I do is so much because of, one, my parents, and two is justice. I knew very young that everything I had to do in my life was, how do I make sure, with my parents always in the back of my head, because I saw them go through things that felt unjust. And you don't have to be educated to know what's just and what's not. You can feel it. When you are an other, you can feel that level of injustice. Or that I don't even know if it's injustice or if it's inequity, right? It just, you feel something's off. I remember a very specific incident where I must have, I don't know, I must have been 5, 10 years old, I don't know. You know, when you're young and when you have parents, I had to be the translator. I had to be the person that was talking to my parents about their doctor's appointments. I was the person that would go along with them. You know, imagine being young and a kid and you see something that says Social Security. What the heck is Social Security? And you have to write it down. You're like, Mom, do you know what your Social Security is? And you are that young. So that level of pressure came to me early on. But what I knew is that we didn't know what it meant. We didn't know what health insurance meant. So that to me already felt a sense of, there's a difference, right? A difference between us and them. Then I remember going with my dad, who was a gardener, to the bank, and he needed to, remember back in the day where you had to take your check to the bank and cash it with a cashier's check or whatever they paid him with, and they didn't want to cash his check. And I remember standing next to him, and they asked him if he was here legally, and my dad looked at them like, yes, of course. I knew something was off. So for me, that's what sparks me. And what also sparks me is knowing that, my parents did everything they could to get us here. It's my job to continue their legacy. It's my job to make sure that every HEAL member in my family has it a little bit better. And that's absolutely been what I think has been the basis. You talk about having to suppress yourself in the offices. That was hard, because when you grow up as an immigrant, you also realize, what are you taught? Don't bring attention to yourself. Keep quiet. Stay in the corner. No digas nada. And that's against everything that you have to do in an organization to get noticed, right? But there was a moment where you just kind of realized, wait, if I am that person that doesn't talk to anybody, if I'm in that person that's in the corner just doing my work with my head down, why would anybody else want to talk to me? Why would anybody else want to speak to me? So I had to figure out how to find that balance and making sure that I wasn't just that quiet person, that quiet student, but that I was really figuring out how to have a point of view. So for me, everything kind of started when I started having a point of view and not being afraid to just have an opinion. And that was hard.
If I think of you, even before coming today, one of the first words that come to my mind is you're a women champion.
No, gracias.
The other thing that comes to my mind when I think of Mónica Gil is that you're always surrounded by a team that loves you. And now I understand that the 12 siblings probably was the training of having to deal with a lot of people and manage it and make sure that people, you probably lead like a mother or like a sister, you know, like making sure that everybody goes there. But so this gender agenda, is that your legacy? Is this the one thing that you have been bringing on like throughout your career? Because we know that you, from your master's, you went to work with Antonio, and then you probably have done a number of pieces where this gender agenda has been part of you. Is that what you...
You know, that's funny. I never saw myself as kind of having a gender agenda. And now that you say it, I understand it, and I believe it.
Amazing.
I believe in strong women. I've always seen myself as Latina first. So for me, it's always been my Latinidad first.
Yeah.
The gender piece, it's because I don't want other women to go through the obstacles that I've had to. So yes, it's being about a champion, but I don't want other women to go through it. I don't want other men to go through it. For me, it's all about exposure. So this thing about being kind of a champion for women, absolutely. I believe in that because I believe that the world is better with Latina women in it. I believe that we do an amazing job of making sure that everything is taken care of and that nothing falls to the cracks. But in terms of my legacy, as you say it, I'm going to be honest with you, I don't feel that. And I don't know if it's because it's just so innately natural to what we do. And I think that's kind of the way that I vision it is, I believe in this. I believe that as a person, as a woman that has a role in an organization of influence, all of us have a responsibility to open the door and bring through a rope and bring another one back in, because that's absolutely hopefully my legacy, not just about women, but bringing in smart, good people. I see my legacy as hopefully being opening doors for those that didn't know how or couldn't get in. Yeah.
We have in this podcast, I think that the inspiration is to provide Latinas the playbook to succeed in your authentic self. And it seems to be very aligned with what, you know, like what you just said about like opening doors. So what would be your playbook? What would you say is the Mónica Gil playbook for Latinas that want to make it? Because all of us want to make it. Every one of our audience is hungry, ambitious, and wants to grow in their profession. So what would be your playbook?
I don't know if I have a specific playbook. I know I have some things that I wish I would have known when I was younger, barely getting started, right? First of all, I think knowing that it's not a linear progression. You're going to go here, 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 here. It's not going to be a straight line getting from point A to point B. I think one of the keys to being playbook is sit in the hard and understand that there's going to be moments that are hard and that life is not going to turn out the way that you actually expect it. But sitting in the hard will make you a better decision maker, will make you a better strategic thinker. That's one.
I'm sorry, what does it mean sitting
in the hard? There's going to be really hard moments that we're all going to face in our career. And a lot of times what happens is you sulk in those moments, you figure out you're stuck. So how do you get unstuck? But you sometimes have to just sit in that moment of hard and say, what's happening here right now? How did I even get to this place? Understand what that hard moment is, because if you're just trying to go to solve it, you're not going to solve it. You have to understand what happened to get you into that hard moment.
Sitting in the hard. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. I learned that from my friend Tashunda, who runs TIAA, and she's fantastic. And that's one of the things that I hear her speak a lot about, is sitting in that moment of hard. The other thing is, I think, is this thing about understanding the unspoken rules of the game is absolutely critical for anyone. Because if you are in a company or if you're moving, read the social cues. Read what's, understand how you're being perceived. Understand what's holding you back and understand how people perceive you. So it's this having an awareness of what those unspoken rules are. Because if you don't know those unspoken rules are, you know what it does? It reduces your opportunity.
Yeah.
If you don't know how the game is played, then you're not going to be asked to do different things. So that thing about really understanding those unspoken rules will I think be very, very important for your career. Judgment, you have to absolutely demonstrate good judgment. And this is the part that we talk a little bit about, you know, when do you have to hold back or not? You can be the highest performer on the planet. You can be great at delivering results.
Yeah.
If you do not demonstrate good judgment, you're not going to be considered for the next step.
So I have some follow-up questions for you on
Sí.
this. Let's talk about the unspoken rules, because one of the things we want to do here is make them visible, because we think that there's some of these unspoken rules are passed through generation to generation, right? Like if your father was in the corporate world, he would tell you.
Sí.
But if you're the first Latina, nobody will tell you. So if these unspoken rules, there's nobody to tell you, how would you like literally tell somebody, observe, understand what is said about you, understand what's required in your company? Can you give us like a few pointers?
Yeah, you know, it's funny because I think that we as women, as Latina women, have to have more conversations about this. I see men do this all the time. They have conversations about it. So I think one of it is we don't even know what to ask for salaries.
Yeah.
We don't even know. I didn't know about stocks until I got my first big job. So I think it's understanding, okay, start there, right? When you are looking for a job, understand what your compensation package looks like and what that's about. That's one. The second thing is, I think I'm very direct. And I think sometimes what happens to people is you're labeled many different things when you're very direct. But the people who really want that information will take it. You have to think of yourself kind of like as an athlete. So think of someone like, for example, Kobe Bryant, right? One of the things that Kobe always did is he wasn't afraid of the obstacles. He wanted that feedback. Feedback is a gift. And also, when you're an athlete, you're not afraid to play the best player. You are ready when you miss a shot. You want to figure out, why did I miss out that shot? So for me, understanding this piece of using the mentality of being an athlete, I think is absolutely critical in figuring out how to understand those rules of the game, because you're embracing that differentness. The feedback piece, I think, is really important. I think it's really important, for example, that if you get a negative review or a review on your performance review that you didn't want, don't just take it. Ask why. Say, okay, you know, or if you want a new job or if you want a promotion and you're being told no, and say, what steps need to happen in order for me to get there? So that piece about really making sure that you are openly asking for feedback is absolutely critical. And as a boss, you know, I have to be really honest with other women and other people on my teams. It's hard sometimes because people don't know how to respond to that. I think as long as you do it empathetically and you do it with good intention, people will see that. And the people that want to grow will accept it. The people that don't have a harder time with it, I think are going to be more challenged. It's hard. Feedback is really hard to accept.
I see that either most people that I end up working with either have never had constructive feedback and they're like, why haven't I like advanced in my career? Or they've gotten the sandwich, the feedback sandwich. No, this is great, this is bad, but this is great. So then they leave the session, they're like, oh, I guess everything is great.
Yeah, because you always do the good and the bad,
exactly.
right?
Exactly. Okay, I'm going to ask you, I think, a harder question. Let's see if you have an answer. You talked about judgment. How does somebody develop good judgment?
Oh, that's such a good question. I think one of the ways, this thing about understanding your cultural environment is really important. You have to be highly sensitive to what is going on. Understand why someone's being successful. A lot of it is making sure that you are understanding what's going on in the environment. Read the room. Starting to read the room is absolutely critically important for sound judgment. Second is you have to read and you have to have a palette outside of your own space. So get yourself out of your own sphere. When you limit your judgment, we are doing the same thing every day. You have to expand your sphere of experiences. I don't think I started developing I think I always knew that I had to have good judgment because I was terrified that I was gonna, I was gonna do something to embarrass my parents, right? And I'm okay with that. I'm okay having that experience. But also, you develop judgment when you see other people, and other experiences. If you don't have that exposure, it's very hard for you to see what other people are thinking or how other people behave. And I think that the last thing is dime con quién andas y te diré quién eres. You absolutely have to pick your friends wisely. If you are around people that chase success, that have good judgment, that will stick. It's contagious.
We all know that Latinos, the purchasing power of Latinos is growing. By 2030, I think like 78 or 30 or 80% of new entrants to become employees are going to be Latinos. So there's going to be a lot of movement in the Latino space. And there's going to be somebody in our audience is going to be the CMO of Telemundo in 10, 20 years. Like you're going to see your legacy in somebody else. What do you want that person to do from now until then? Like, what do you think is going to prepare somebody to be the CMO of Telemundo in 10, 20 years?
Learn a P&L. Learn how the business runs. Understands the business of ratings and revenue. Every company in America is based on finances and based on what their core deliverables are. So for me, one of the things that I wish that I would have done younger is understand how to understand the P&L.
No?
Because we don't do that space enough.
No, especially marketers. They see us as revenue, as a cost center instead of... Yeah.
You need to be a storyteller, understanding finances, understanding how the rest of the world works. So one is definitely understand a P&L. Second is have a global perspective. It is so important to understand what is impacting all of the dynamics in the country, right? What's going on in right now in the world politically, but also understand what's going on in other countries that are influencing us. Manufacturing, for example, comes from many different places, not just in the United States. So figuring out what are the contributors from other countries and what are the stopgaps on it. So to me, those were things that I would absolutely value. The last thing I say is actually two more things. One is understanding the importance of technology and how fast AI is moving. Embrace it now. Don't try to catch up, because keeping up is easier than catching up.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important for people to understand that. And I think the last piece is really understanding how the future labor force wants to receive information. Understanding their consumer habits, their preferences, because one of the things that I think happens to all of us as marketers is that we tend to rely on what we've always done, and we really have to embrace kind of how, a lot of times you want to give information the way you want to give it.
Yeah.
But the best part is giving people information the way they want to receive it. You're going to be more successful.
And you see it a little bit like you go to Cannes and it's like, is everybody here 10 years late? Like it feels like we're still talking about how our generation wants to receive information instead of kind of keeping up and not catching up with younger generation.
I just have to say, Monica, you are one of the most awarded Latina trailblazers and marketer. You are doing all the operations and all the marketing for Telemundo. And I think that for so many of us, you're such an inspiration and you're such a guiding light. I would like to finish with telling directly to our audience straight on, okay, young Latinas, this is my final message. Whatever whatever you want to tell your audiences, knowing that we respect you, we admire you, and we have been so inspired by you.
Wow. I think the thing I would say to other Latinas and to all of us here is your future is so bright. It's blinding. And I say that because, when we were younger, we didn't know how to dream. I wasn't taught to dream. I was taught to, not for anybody's fault. I think I was taught to just make it every single day. But I wasn't taught to dream beyond what I thought I had. So I think also the power of grit is really important. Make sure that when you get a no, it just means a not yet. It's just a not yet, because it will come together. And I think the last is what my dad always taught me is work hard, do your work diligently, and sign your name proudly.
Well, you make us so absolutely proud as a Latino community, and for all your 11 siblings and your parents, they probably are so proud of you the way that we are of you. So we're so grateful for having you here today. Thank you so very much. It's really an honor.
You guys are awesome.
Thank you so very much.
Gracias.
And honestly, with your advice and with all the pieces that you gave us, we're going to be able to lead and succeed. A LA LATINA!